What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to District Baseball. I'm your host, Trey. You can follow me on Twitter at reverse 2Rs, 2Ss. It's going to be in right below me, actually. So check me out on Twitter/X. Check us out at District Baseball, at District BSB, down in the bottom right corner on X as well. Solo cast tonight. It's just going to be me. Nick was feeling a bit under the weather, so we're wishing him well. But we still wanted to get an episode out to you guys for the championship series and also some recapping of the previous playoff series because it was simply insane. Both the Wild Card series were pretty crazy, but especially the divisional series. We'll start with the Wild Card series. They were all sweeps, all 2-0s. I was a little bummed out we didn't get a third all-day baseball day during the week. It's always my favorite time of year is when you get those weekday baseball games, which I know some people can't watch. I'm lucky enough to have a job that is pretty good on the hours. Like, I get to kind of pick my hours, so that's helpful for me. I understand that people can't watch all the games, but I really enjoyed it, so I was a little disappointed that there was no Game 3s. But let's start in Minnesota. The Twins finally broke that playoff curse, both for their playoff losing streak, which is at, up to 18 games. They broke that, and also their series losing streak going back to 2002 when they beat the A's. The Moneyball A's, actually, were their last series win. Great pitching by both Pablo Lopez and Sonny Gray, especially Lopez in Game 1. He just showed why that trade just worked out for both. I mean, the Twins needed to revamp that pitching. They got Pablo Lopez. He was awesome for them during the season, helped them win the division, helped them win their playoff game. Great stuff from him. And then Sonny Gray wasn't quite as sharp in Game 2, but battled through, and I believe they only get 1 run, 5 innings. So he did really well. Royce Lewis with 2 bombs in Game 1 that helped them secure that W. So good for the Twins. They should feel pretty good about where they are. We'll actually talk about them more in a little bit, but let's go ahead and move on to the Rangers and Rays. That was another 2-0 sweep, this time by the road team, the Rays. Guys, I don't know about the Rays right now. There was no energy from the team, and there certainly wasn't energy from the fans because they didn't even sell 20,000 tickets to Game 1. It was probably lower for Game 2, and there's concern there because they have this big new stadium deal in the same area in St. Pete and not in Tampa Bay. A lot of fans don't like the Trop, one, because it's the Trop and it kind of sucks just in general, but two, it's not in downtown Tampa. It's not really close to Tampa. It's in St. Pete, which is about 45 minutes outside of Tampa Bay from what I understand. And it's kind of hard to get there with traffic and stuff like that, and it's kind of questionable why they would say they're going to build a brand new big old stadium in the same place when that doesn't really solve the issue of it not being in the right place. It should be in Tampa, but it's not. So we'll have to see what happens with that. I guess we'll find out if it's the stadium itself or if it's the location when they do end up moving to that stadium, which I think will be in a few years from what I understand. Moving on to the D-backs and the Brewers. The Diamondbacks, again, the road team takes the Brewers to town. The Brewers had some really bad injury news right before this series that definitely did not help with Brandon Woodruff, who is unfortunately going to miss all of 2024. Big bummer. Really big bummer for him. Big bummer for their team, but especially for him because this is a contract year. So he is going to, unfortunately, probably be playing on some kind of, prove-it deal instead of what he might have gotten because of this injury. So that's unfortunate. And then Burns and Peralta, they didn't step up. They didn't play well enough. They got outpitched by the D-backs bullpen and Zach Gallen in Game 2. Evan Longoria showed up, though. The old man leader of this D-backs squad, him and Tommy Pham, those veteran presences, have really, I think, done well for them. And he played great defense in Game 1 of that series. And like I said, the D-backs bullpen, they really strung it together, made it happen with a tough matchups and kind of dominated. So good on them. They moved on to the DS. And finally, we got the Phillies 2-0ing the Marlins. It wasn't really particularly close. We don't even have to really dwell on this series besides saying that Wheeler and Nola were great. Marlins had 2 runs on 12 hits total. Josh Bell had a third of those hits. He went 4 for 8 with 2 doubles. He had an RBI and a run scored. So it wasn't his fault, our good friend Josh Bell. But Marlins shouldn't have been there in the first place. They made it, but the Phillies were just too much. And that will about do it for the wild card recaps. Let us head right into the division series recaps, because these series were crazy in a multitude of different ways. So we'll go ahead and start with the first 2 here, because I'm not going to talk about them too much yet, because we're going to expand on those in the next 2 segments. But we'll start with Texas against the Baltimore Orioles. Finally, the O's make it to the playoffs. They have this great 101-win season. They win the division. The crowd was electric. They were so excited to see their boys in the playoffs. And they disappointed. I will say, their young position players did not disappoint. They really fought. They scored runs. The problem was what we knew the problem was, which was the pitching. We knew the pitching was the problem. They have some guys, but they don't have the ace yet. We were wondering if Grayson Rodriguez could be that guy. It's not his time yet. He's still too young. He got shelled in Game 2. Kyle Bradish, pretty good in Game 1, but couldn't give them the length they needed. And then I don't even remember who they started in Game 3. I know that it wasn't Kyle Gibson, who I thought they were going to start, but I believe it was Dean Kramer, actually, and he got shelled. So we knew that was the problem. They knew going into the deadline that was the problem, and they did not address it, and that's what happens in the playoffs when you don't have the pitching. Moving on, though, we'll go to the Phillies-Braves series. The Phillies defeated the Braves in 4 games, 3-1. Probably should have been 3 games, but they blew Game 2 pretty badly. The Phillies' power was the big difference. They had 11 total home runs in 4 games, 6 of those coming in Game 3, which was electric, and we will definitely be getting more into that one, because that might have been the most entertaining game of the entire playoffs for me personally. But yeah, so the Braves didn't have the pitching to match up, and they had some injuries, so that hurt them going in. But even their healthy guys, the healthy guy Strider did not live up to the hype, so they were outmatched by the Phillies pitching staff. And last quick note about the Phillies pitching: Ranger Suarez started 2 of those games, only allowed 1 run in 8.2 innings pitched. Good on Ranger Suarez for stepping up when the team really needed him. They did not have their rotation set up going into this series because of the wild card, and it didn't matter. They still performed, so good on them. Good for Phillies. I know got the Nats stuff, and I didn't want either of these teams to win, but I would have rathered it be Philly than Atlanta right now. So good for the Phillies. Give us a good NLCS against the Diamondbacks. Guys, the D-backs came out and just I honestly don't know. Did they want it more? Were they just a better team at the time? It's possible that they were, because the Dodgers pitching staff, you want to talk about injured, that's the team to talk about. Injuries with their pitchers. They have definitely had a struggle in that department, but they didn't do a whole lot to address it during the trade deadline. They probably didn't do enough. They might have thought they were getting Walker Buehler back, but he ended up not coming back, and then they got Lance Lynn, who I think everybody would tell you wasn't really the answer for that particular team's rotation. And then you get playoff Kershaw. Now, Kershaw at this point, he's older. He's not the same guy that he used to be. He still has that stigma on his head, and it was reinforced, we'll say. That's like the nice way of putting it on Game 1. He didn't make it more than 1 inning. He might have actually not even made it out of the first inning. I don't think he did, because he gave up 7 runs to the Diamondbacks, who were just firing on all cylinders. I don't think they even made an out until about their 6th or 7th batter. And, I mean, they just dominated immediately in Game 1. It just set the tone for the rest of the series. The Dodgers looked defeated immediately upon the series starting. The D-backs set the tone. The Dodgers kind of just accepted that tone, and they didn't really do much to get back into it. Mookie and Freddie Freeman both struggled mightily in the series. The D-backs pitching stepped up. Brandon fought in Game 3. I think he could have kept going, but he had the best start of his career, his very young career so far, going almost 5 innings, went 4.2, I believe, and allowing 0 runs against that Dodgers lineup. The Dodgers lineup was healthy. They don't have an excuse, besides maybe the playoff formatting, which I'll get to in a little bit. Maybe, okay? I'm not even going to give them that as an excuse. And they probably wouldn't use it either. They didn't play well at all. I don't know if the layoff had anything to do with that. They just got dominated. But we'll move on. Oh, yes, also, before I move on, the Diamondbacks did something that has never been done before. And, this game has been around for, 150 years-ish, and you're still getting things that have never happened. They hit 4 homers in a single inning in a postseason game. That's never happened. And the way they did it was even crazier. It starts with Geraldo Perdomo, first of all, 6 homers on the year, just decides, I'm gonna send one out real quick in the postseason. So good for him. Followed by Ketel Marte hitting a rocket. These weren't back-to-back, by the way, so that still could be done. But they were all in the same inning. Christian Walker hit a line drive out for the 3rd homer of the inning. And then the special moment with Gabby Moreno, who, by the way, is playing amazing and looks like a steal from the Blue Jays, considering how their catchers fared this season. Gabby Moreno, I, at the beginning of the year, shouted him out, I believe, in one of our player ranking podcasts. I didn't rank him in the top 10. Maybe I should have. This dude has some star potential. He's amazing on defense, and if the bat comes alive like it has in the postseason, you can really see. And he's tough. I mean, the dude got knocked on the head. He had to leave a game, comes back in. He got hit on the hand. He stayed in the game, ended up leaving that one too, but he's going to play in the CS. But anyways, the story goes, he hits one down the right field line. It's hooking, ends up foul. They call it fair initially. They reviewed it, overturned it. So now it's a foul ball. It's like a 2-2 count. Steps back in. The very next pitch, hammers one to left center. No doubt about it. Wasn't any question about whether that was a foul ball because it was a missile. And he topped off that inning with 4 homers. Those were the only 4 runs they scored in that game. All in that inning. End up winning 4-2. All off of Lance Lynn, by the way. So I know that Dodgers fans are probably like, hey, Dave Roberts, why didn't you pull him a little earlier? And I agree, personally. But we're not going to get into Dave in this one, maybe in a future episode. Last thing I'll talk about here is the playoff formatting, because there's a lot of fans and former players that are like, maybe the 5-day layoff is an issue. And, I can kind of understand it from their perspective, because baseball players are routine-based, and they're used to playing every day, and when you have a big layoff like that, that's a bigger layoff than even the All-Star break, it can maybe stunt your momentum. The issue with that is the Houston Astros, who just continue to dominate, no matter what seed they're in. Last year they were the 1 seed overall. They had the most number of rest days of any team, won the World Series. This year they're the 2 seed, still have the bye. They come out and immediately win because, getting into that series, by the way, which I haven't even gotten to yet. I forgot almost. Jose Altuve hit a first pitch homer, so he was ready to go. They didn't have any questions about whether or not they were going to be hot or not. They just came out and won. Ended up beating the Twins 3-1, and it wasn't like it wasn't close. The Twins pitching really battled in games 1, 2, and 4. Unfortunately, Sonny Gray really struggled in that game 3. So that was pretty much the only blowout of the series. But then you had other pitchers stepping up. Their bullpen stepped up. It just wasn't quite enough. The Astros pitching staff did step up, and their bullpen, Abreu, is up to this crazy scoreless inning streak now, going back to June, and he was excellent for Houston in this series. And the Twins, they struck out too much, and that was a big issue for them all season. They were, I believe, 2nd or maybe even 1st in the league in K rate, and it came back to bite them. They struck out too much. They couldn't move runners. They couldn't hit enough homers to make up for that. But they did play well, and they should feel good about where they are in the future. So now getting back to the playoff format, the Astros kind of wreck that theory, because they're like, hey, we haven't had any problems we've come right in and won both years with the most off days of any team. So what are they doing differently? Hopefully it's not what they were doing differently the last time, if you catch my drift. But there is something to be said. I think if it was me personally, with 6 teams in each, this is with the current number of teams, mind you, I would be okay with maybe making the division series a 7-game series, because that way you have enough games to get it going. And then that's less of an excuse. Like, we didn't have enough games to get our momentum back, I guess. Once again, the Astros kind of wrecked that, but I wouldn't mind adding a 7-game series as a divisional series. If they have to take 6 games off the regular season, so be it. That's totally fine. But, what else can you really do with this amount of teams? Not much. So you'd have to consider adding teams, which would either go to 7, there would still be a bye, or 8, which would be too many for this current number of teams. You'd have to wait for an expansion to probably 32. For me, it would be 34 teams before you even consider 16. So it's tough. I think it's probably going to stay like it is right now, and I don't really have a big problem with that. I know some people have a bigger problem with that than others, and I think the discussion's valid, but at the end of the day, if a team is using it as an excuse, that's a big issue. And I don't think these teams are. I think maybe some fans are trying to use that as an excuse. There are some other excuses being used by players that we will get into in a little bit. But first of all, let's move on to our third category here. We're going to talk about the Orioles specifically because, quite frankly, this is going to be kind of controversial, but hear me out. Don't type angry comments immediately. I'm glad the Orioles lost. I'm happy the Orioles lost. And the reason is not because of fans. It is not because of their players. I really enjoy their players. They're super entertaining. How can you not really like watching that team unless you're like a rival? It has nothing to do with front office. I think their front office has done pretty well with their resources. It all has to do with the man at the top, Mr. John Angelos. This guy is a grade A scumbag, okay? Let's remember how the Orioles got here, because people are kind of forgetting what they did. They tanked so hard that Major League Baseball changed the rules of how the MLB draft operates, because they had like 3 number 1 picks, and all of those number 1 picks are going to be dudes, or already are. Rutschman, Henderson. Now it's going to be Jackson Holliday, who's already shown that he's probably the best pick in that draft so far. And he's already in AAA he was in AAA at the end of the year doing his thing. So they had to change the rules because of what the Orioles did, because they tanked so hard. Let me just go through their payrolls, because this is where you can really see what they were doing. If we go back to the beginning of this season, they started the preseason 27th out of 30 teams in payroll. They finished 29th because they didn't do anything at the deadline that was worth enough, and teams below them did. Now, that didn't impact their regular season record, but that definitely impacted them in the postseason, there's no doubt. 2022, it was kind of their breakout. They started pretty poorly. They ended up at 83 and 79. They were 30th in payroll. 2021, 52 and 110. Back to the really tank years. 29th in payroll. 2020. This year doesn't really count because it was obviously the COVID shortened. They went 25 and 35. They would have lost 100 games in a full season. There's no doubt. They were 30th in payroll. They weren't trying to win. 2019, 28th in payroll, 54 and 108. In 2018, they were 14th. They went 47 and 115 because that was mostly Chris Davis. That was most of their payroll that year was Chris Davis. So that doesn't even really count in my book as a winning payroll. And that's where you see what Angelos has done to get them here. And that's why they changed the draft to make this not a thing that can happen again, because you shouldn't be rewarded for not spending money. Let's think about this from a human being perspective. People lost jobs, players, managers, front office, staff workers. They cut everything, okay? And now they go 101 wins, and their scumbag owner is already saying that he's not going to pay their next players. We have quotes from, this is directly from Angelos himself. This is not somebody that is like speculating, okay? This is a real quote. Let's say we sat down and showed you the financials for the Orioles, which, by the way, he has said he will do like 50 different times and never has. You will quickly see that when people talk about giving this player $200 million, that player $150 million, we would be so financially underwater that you'd have to raise the prices massively. Which is not how supply and demand works, by the way, and he, as a capitalist, should know that, considering that he's a frickin' sports owner. And he does know that. He's trying to make some statement here about how they're poor. No sports owner is truly poor. Those assets continue to appreciate in value every single year by a lot. It's not even like a small percentage that these values are raising in value. Or these franchises are raising in value. It's like 50% this year, especially in 2023, where they have... This has been a really, really good year for baseball attendance and viewership, so they are making so much freaking money. This is not the time to cry poor. And when you see the publicly traded franchises come out with their numbers, the Braves and the Blue Jays, you're going to see exactly what I mean, because those franchises made bank. I know that every franchise made money this year. And so for John Angelos to come out and cry poor is absolutely ridiculous. If you're really that poor, dude, sell the team. Sell the team. You won't sell the team because you're not poor, because you're making so much freaking money. You know, they've been making this much money for years without paying their players. They had, again, a bottom 5 payroll, again, this year. And for Angelos to cry poor is pretty disgusting. It's not as disgusting as the last time he cried poor. John Angelos is a special kind of scumbag owner. He's not just the scumbag owner. He's an advanced scumbag owner. He's almost like the worst owner in this sport. I know that some people, fans of other teams, like the Pirates, for example, might scoff at that. But seriously, this guy is just as bad. This man scheduled a press conference with the full media on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And then when they asked him about the financials, of which he has said that he will disclose multiple times before, he totally backfired on them and was like, I can't believe that you would ask those questions on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. How dare you dishonor Dr. King like that? How dare they do that, right? How dare they ask a sports owner questions about his franchise, of which he's been tanking for years? How dare the media do that? This is the same guy who suspended his broadcaster for reading stats on the screen. Do you understand yet? This guy sucks. He deserves none of this. None of it. And if the Orioles don't spend again, they should force him to sell. I mean, this is ridiculous. He's already saying he's not going to pay guys that are like, they have like 5-6 years of control. Some of them aren't even in the MLB yet. Oh my God, I said the MLB. I'm so sorry, everyone. Strike that from the record. That never happened. I can't believe it. I'm just so wound up about John Angelos. This guy's such a loser. He's been holding the Nats hostage for years, even though I don't even care about that stuff, because those are just so the money amounts are so ridiculous that you don't even. It's like I don't even have context for how much that is. Like, that's the kind of money these people are arguing for. It's ridiculous. I just had to rant about Angelos. This guy is a supreme scumbag, and watch out, because he's going to continue doing this. And if he doesn't, then finally he's going to pay somebody. He's got to pay some of these guys. Like, it's ridiculous. Anyways, let's move on to another bunch of whiners, Atlanta Braves fans, and their broadcasters, by the way. Attaboy Braves fans. Attaboy Braves fans. For finding any and all excuses you could to discredit the Phillies' dominant performance over you. You got beat. If you're a Braves fan and you haven't looked yourself in the mirror and said, we just lost, then you're doing it wrong. You lost the game. You lost the series. It's just how it is. And they want to bring in an excuse for their team. First, it's the playoffs. It's the playoff format, the 5-day layoff. Clearly, that was the reason why they were bad. But then Houston wins, so you don't really have that anymore. Let's find a different excuse. So then it's the pitcher injuries. Oh, our starting rotation's hurt. Morton's out. Fried isn't 100%. Yada, yada, yada. Strider was so good, except when it mattered the most. Okay. They didn't have the pitching because of injuries. Okay, there's excuse number 2. Let's find even a better one. How about we find one? The media is against the Braves because they reported something that a Braves player said while the media was in the clubhouse, and reporters were there. Wait, what? That's the excuse? The victim mentality is stunning with some of these Braves fans and their broadcasters and even some players. I'm gonna get to that because I'm not even a Braves fan and I'm upset with Ronald Acuna Jr. personally. And I'm sure Braves fans aren't very happy with him either. But the excuse that somehow this Attaboy Harper quote was not supposed to be reported is absolutely ridiculous. Why would a reporter not report what they hear while they're doing their media cycles in the clubhouse? If you don't want something said out, if you don't want something to get out, don't say it in a room full of reporters. Wait an hour. They're not in there the whole night. Like, they leave eventually, and then you're in private with your teammates, and then you can say whatever the hell you want. And then you have players coming on Twitter to like argue for like that, like saying like, yeah, you shouldn't be able to report something if you're not talking directly to the reporter. I'm like, dude, you make millions of dollars. You can take the media for an hour. I'm sorry. Like, I don't have sympathy. I really don't. And I'm pro player getting paid. They should get paid a lot. They work hard. They bring in a ton of money for various different cities. They deserve that money. They also have to do media obligations. Okay? You have to. It's part of the job. You make millions of dollars to do this. So sometimes things suck about it. Sorry. That's how it works. Just the excuses from every side. The Braves broadcasters, their radiocasters, they need to be fired. Okay, simple as that. First of all, they said that Orlando Arcia didn't even say Attaboy Harper in the broadcast of Game 3, which he later clarified Arcia did, that he didn't in fact say it. He totally said Attaboy Harper and admitted it later. So, strike one, Braves broadcasters, you already are misreporting things. Secondly, they somehow tried to equate Harper's neck slice sign, which I believe he's been doing all season, by the way. They tried to equate that as somehow he was like talking about the conflicts out east right now. Somehow they tried to say that he shouldn't do that because of that. I'm like, dude, like, do you really think that Bryce Harper is making some political statement right now? No, he's saying your team's dead because I'm killing you. And what are you, Arcia, dude, what are you doing? What are you doing? The one dude on that team right now, especially, I mean, any of them really, but that, you do not mess with, you don't talk crap about Bryce Harper, ever. You leave him alone and hope that he doesn't destroy your team. That's all. I mean, Orlando Arcia is not going to have a job in Atlanta next year because of this. Like, it's not entirely his fault that they lost, but you don't spark Bryce Harper. Ever. Bryce came out and made them pay. 2 homers. 2 stare downs. It was awesome. Like, I know I'm a Nats fan, and I shouldn't say that about the Phillies, but dude, I don't care. Bryce Harper is so fucking cool. Excuse my language. Anyways, the excuses are the issue. That's my problem. Travis d'Arnaud later was like, yeah, the clubhouse is a sacred place and nothing should ever be reported that anything was said. I'm like, dude, they're gonna report it. Don't say it in a room full of reporters. It's like common sense. I don't understand. And then Ronald Acuna, dude, you sucked, and then you left without talking to the media. Your teammates sat there and took questions. I saw AJ Minter take full responsibility, saying, hey, we didn't do it as a team. We didn't have it. We didn't win. We lost. Simple. Brilliant. Even Snicker, said, you know, look at the Astros. I know that he's probably saying he probably doesn't like this playoff format either, but he's saying like they won and they had the same bye and we didn't win. Ronald Acuna Jr. left without talking to the media, saying he had to catch the bus. No, you did not. You are the face of this franchise. Whether you want to be or not, you are, because you're Ronald Acuna Jr. and you're going to win the MVP this year. You have to take questions from the media. Okay? It's not even for the media. It's for your teammates. And people have made this point, and I'm going to agree with it. Your teammates will respect you a whole lot more if you stand up there and don't make excuses. Instead, he ran away. So if I'm a Braves fan, I'm pretty not happy with Ronald Acuna Jr. right now. And if I'm his teammate, I'm not happy with Ronald Acuna Jr. right now. And somebody should probably talk to him and say, look, dude, whether you want to be the leader or not, you are, because you're that good. And it just comes with the territory. Anyways, let's move on to the final segment. The Championship Series preview is going to keep this short and sweet because, first of all, it's already happening. Houston, Texas is playing right here. It is currently 1-0 Rangers in Game 1. So that series will be happening already. This is the first time that these two teams have ever played in the playoffs against each other because they were in different leagues. And since they've been in the same league, they've only made the playoffs once in the same season. That was 2015. They did not play each other that year. But this year, the Texas series is active. And from what I know from the fans, they take this really seriously in Texas. So we're going to have a good atmosphere, I believe, for some of these games. Max Scherzer could be available as a pitcher at some point in this series for the Rangers. Would that be a determining factor? We'll have to wait and see. But that could be interesting going forward. And then there's the Phillies versus the Diamondbacks. This is a funny matchup because it's kind of similar to last year, where you have this NL West wildcard team come and like sort of surprise people. The Padres, at least, were more built for the postseason than this D-back squad. But they've played extremely well. I think this is the end of the road, though. Philadelphia is kind of on this mission, it seems, to get back and win this World Series, and I kind of think they might do it. And I don't love saying that, but that's kind of how I feel. They got dogs on that team. The D-backs got some dogs, too. Okay, let's not get it twisted. But I don't think they have the pitching. There's just not enough pitching for the D-backs in a 7-game series because they're going to have to find a lot of innings from their bullpen if they continue their current strategy of basically not letting their starters go past the 5th inning. And that's not going to work in a 7-game series. You're going to have to get some length from somebody, whether that be Merrill Kelly, who had a good start against the Dodgers, Zach Gallen, who is obviously able, but then you have Brandon Pfaadt, who they're not letting pitch very far. He's going to have to get into the 5th and 6th inning if they want to have a chance, and I don't think that's going to happen. So, with all of that being said, thank you guys for watching. This is the end of the episode. Reminder, we have all our Twitter handles down below, or X, whatever you want to call it. So go check us out there. We've been tweeting during the playoffs, obviously a little bit less because Nick's been under the weather. He mostly tweets from that account. But once we get healthy here at District Baseball, we'll have Nick back on as well, and we'll get back to our regularly scheduled programming. But yeah, that is going to end the episode. Please leave a comment if you have any thoughts about the current episode, or if you're listening via the podcast. Just have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.